So this is how to sow and grow tomatoes. Now, tomatoes are without doubt my absolute favorite thing to grow. They're super, super productive. They're fairly easy once you know what you're doing, and they come in basically every color of the rainbow, all different shapes and sizes, textures, colors, and patterns. They are a truly beautiful crop that was originally grown as an ornamental plant. Now, the thing to remember with tomatoes is they are a very fast growing plant. So you can start them early. If you start them early, you're going to need to do that under lights. So check out our video on grow lights to make sure you know exactly what you're doing, but they are going to grow fast. But if you start early, you're going to end up with fairly big plants before you get to the point where you can plant them out, because they are very frost tender. So you have to wait till after all chance of last frost has passed. So if you want to start early, late February would be a very early start, and that would be under lights. If you haven't got a lot of space to store bigger plants, then you're going to want to wait a little bit longer. Think about starting in March or even April. Because they grow really fast, you can start this crop pretty late on in the season and it will catch up. So because it's fast growing, I like to sow tomatoes in pots, just to give you a little bit longer before you have to pot it up into something a bit larger. So take your pot and fill it with compost, give it a little pat to get rid of any air pockets in the soil. And then you're going to take your seed. Now I sow 2 seeds per pot, and they don't need to be sown deeply at all. So you can basically just put them on the surface of the soil. Now, the reason I sow 2, although you get really high germination rates with tomatoes, so it's highly likely you're going to get 2 tomato seedlings within that pot, to give yourself 100% confidence that you're going to get full germination in everything you sow. Now, when I'm sowing the tomatoes 2 to a pot, I like to put the 2 seeds a little distance apart. That gives you the choice. You can either just remove the weaker seedling and let the stronger seedling grow on, or you can carefully tease out that second seedling, pot it up into its own pot, and you've got another plant. So then just sprinkle a tiny bit of compost over the top of the seeds. You are literally just covering them. They don't need to be deep at all. And tomatoes like warmth to germinate, so putting them on a heat mat or in a heated propagator is a fantastic way to speed up germination. If you try and do it without, you're going to want to do it later in the season when things are a bit warmer and things may just go a little bit slower. If you are going to do it without additional heat, then you're going to want to wait till later in the season when things have warmed up a little bit, and you may just take a tiny bit longer for things to germinate. But with heat, you may find that your seedlings appear in under a week. Once your seedlings appear, make sure they have plenty of light on them. So grow lights can really help, or they need to be a nice sunny position in a window. If your seedlings aren't getting enough light, you may find that you get what's known as leggy seedlings. That's where the seedling gets very long and thin, and all it's doing there is reaching up and up and up, trying to find enough light to grow. But with tomatoes, you can rectify that problem. You haven't ruined your crop. So this seedling has grown a little bit longer than we'd ideally like, but tomatoes have the ability to grow roots out of almost anywhere on their stems. And as a result, what you can do in order to rectify this is, when you're potting it on, make a really deep hole and carefully push the seedling all the way down until it's buried all the way up until the first set of leaves. Cover that with soil, and then what's going to happen is that plant is going to form roots all the way up that buried section of stem. So what you actually end up from a weak and unhealthy plant that was too tall is a very strong plant that has a really big, strong root system. So grow your seedlings on, potting them up as necessary until you can plant them out after all risk of frost has passed. If you want to know when it's time to pot them up, keep an eye on the drainage holes on the bottom of the pot. When you start to see roots appearing out of there, the plant is starting to outgrow the pot, and that's the sign that it needs to move up in size. Once your plants get to about 15 centimeters tall, you can then also start to feed them. So you're going to want to use a very weak dosage of a liquid feed, and you want an organic liquid feed. Something like seaweed feed is ideal, and it's pretty widely available and easy to get hold of. You don't want to be using chemical feeds on anything that you're going to put in your body. And you want to mix that up to about quarter of the strength that it says on the packet. So we're talking very weak, and do it about every 2 weeks. And then when it comes time to plant out your seedlings, remember, tomatoes can grow both indoors and outdoors. You just tend to find that if you grow them indoors, i.e. in a greenhouse or a polytunnel, they tend to perform better. That's because they just love heat. but they will grow perfectly well outdoors as well. One thing you might find if you're growing them outdoors though, is that they might be more susceptible to blight. We've covered blight and tomato pruning and other care in a whole separate video, so you know exactly how to take care of tomato plants from the point that you've planted them out. The other thing to bear in mind when you're choosing a position for your tomatoes is that intermediate tomatoes, that's cordon tomatoes, and you're going to find that most tomatoes are intermediate tomatoes. They require some support because they're going to get really, really tall. So make sure that you've got some way to provide those tomatoes with support wherever you choose to plant them. So do check out our video on pruning and tomato plant care for how to look after the plant from the time that you've got it planted out into its final position, because there are a few tricks to it, and if you can get them right, you will find that you probably get a much bigger harvest. So we have a huge range online. It's something we're really, really passionate about, and we're trying to bring you the most exciting and most inspirational varieties that we can possibly get hold of. So check out our range on shegrowsveg.com.